Well, I think we'll get started. Welcome to today's webinar on Southwest Minnesota Arts Council's Arts in the Schools grants for fiscal year 2021, which for us runs from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. I am Carolyn Koska, the Financial and Grants Administrator here at Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. And first, we'll just run down the list of what we're going to talk about today. First, I'll tell you a little bit about Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, or SMAC. We'll take a look at the guidelines for this grant program. We'll look at the resources we have for you on our website. Then we'll go into our grant system and walk through the application. And we'll finish up by talking about how the whole grant process works, basically what happens after you submit an application. Right now I've got everyone muted. If you have questions, feel free to type those into your little chat window there. I'll try and watch that as we are talking. I'll also stop a couple places for questions, and then at the end of the presentation I'll unmute everyone and we can talk directly then as well. So the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, or SMAC, is a nonprofit organization committed to promoting and encouraging the development of the arts in the 18 counties of Southwest Minnesota by serving as a source of funds and technical services which enable local organizations, educational institutions, and individuals to sponsor, create, and promote the arts in their communities. We are one of 11 regional arts councils that cover the state of Minnesota. Here we are down in our southwest corner. Our funding comes mostly from the state of Minnesota, some from its general fund, and a large part from the Arts and Cultural Heritage or Legacy Fund. We also have funds from the McKnight Foundation and local members and donors. A few things that SMAC is committed to: supporting artists and arts organizations in creating, producing, and presenting high-quality arts activities, overcoming barriers to accessing high-quality arts activities, instilling the arts into the community and public life, supporting high-quality, age-appropriate arts education for all ages to develop knowledge, skills, and understanding of the arts, and supporting events and activities that represent the diverse ethnic and cultural arts traditions of the region. So these are some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about what you might want your project to be, as everything should kind of tie back into these commitments that we have. The Arts in the Schools grant program is open to public schools in the 18 counties of our SMAC service region. And those counties include Big Stone, Chippewa, Cottonwood, Jackson, Candy, Ojai, Lac qui Parle, Lincoln, Lyon, McLeod, Meeker, Murray, Nobles, Pipestone, Redwood, Renville, Rock, Swift, and Yellow Medicine. And we acknowledge that this region occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people who have stewarded these lands throughout the generations. We have 4 project types that you may do under the Arts in the Schools grant program. Those include artist residencies, juried student art exhibits, arts field trips, and prepackaged theater experiences. These all may look a little different right now as far as what all of us are able to do in person or not. So kind of keep in mind as we're talking about these to sort of think outside the box for the time being, how these projects could work for you. All of these projects need to be open to all students within a grade, subject discipline, or activity, rather than exclusive to a student organization or specific students selected by faculty. So we'll talk about each one of those 4 types of projects. The first is artist residencies, which are learning partnerships between an artist and a school, and they can involve any arts discipline. Your artist residency should have first a professional artist or arts organization like a theater company, that will be working with your students, a core student group that will receive extended in-depth artist contact. So maybe the artist is doing a presentation to the whole school, but they're spending most of their time with fourth graders during this residency. So that would be that core student group. We're also looking for this to have some artist and teacher time for planning and training. There needs to be a teacher present during artist-student contact time. And we're also looking for a community component to be able to share this residency experience with the rest of the community. So these days might be a virtual residency, or maybe we're just planning ahead for further out into the future when we can be doing things more in person. The next project type is juried student art exhibits. For this project, a school or even a group of schools could bring in professional artists to jury a student art show that is open to the public. And that might include some student music performances as well. The grant funds for this can pay for those artists to be the jurors, for advertising the show in the community, student awards, etc. And just one grant per show, regardless of how many schools there are involved in that project. Our next project type is arts field trips, which again is not the easiest thing to do at the moment. But the arts field trip can include visits to artist studios, performances by professional theater, dance, or music groups, art galleries, anything art related. And finally, our last project type is a prepackaged theater experience. Schools can bring in these theater experiences, such as those from Prairie Fire or Missoula Children's Theaters. And the couple of actors come in with everything needed for the show that they're planning to put on, costumes, props, scripts, and then in a week you have a theater production. The artist residency projects, for those you can request up to $4,000. And for the juried art exhibit, field trip, and prepackaged theater project, you can request up to $2,500. There is no cash match required for the artist residencies, juried art exhibits, or field trips, which means that the school does not have to put up any of their own money towards this project unless the project costs more than you can request. Normally, we do require a match for the prepackaged theater project because you're probably going to be selling tickets. However, for this current year, fiscal year 2021, we are not requiring matches for any of our grant programs. So this one would not need a match this year. Now we'll take a look at some things related to eligibility. The following list are things that are not eligible for SMOT grants or for this Arts in the Schools program. So not eligible would be requests from parochial schools because we are using state money to fund these. That is a condition of using those funds. Also not eligible is payment of school personnel unless you are paying for a substitute teacher while the regular teacher is participating in the project. Substitutions for regular school programs. So this project really should be supplemental to what is being done in the classroom rather than taking the place of things that would be part of the curriculum. Supplies outside of those needed specifically for this project. Projects that don't have an art focus. Activities that take place outside of Minnesota. Again, since we're using those state funds, we are required that all activities take place within the state. Activities for the religious socialization of the participants or audience. Fundraising events. These grants should enable you to break even on these projects, not to make a profit. And also ineligible are payments of debts incurred before the grant begins, grant funds being used to match another SMOT grant, and applicants with past due final reports. So make sure to check the guidelines as you're preparing to fill out your application. You'll see later when I show you where these are that there are both guidelines specifically for this program and then general grant guidelines that apply to all of our grant programs. So make sure to look at those as you are working on an application. Your project will need a start date and an end date. And your start date is what we consider the project being set in motion, and things that would be indicative of the project being set in motion would be paying fees or contracts, ordering supplies, having any sort of auditions or rehearsals, doing advertising. So all of those have to take place on or after your project start date. And with that in mind, your start date should not be the date of your first activity or event, because you can't spend any grant funds before the project's start date. If there's something that absolutely needs to be paid for before your project start date, if you have to put down a deposit on a contract, for instance, then that amount cannot be included in your grant project budget. And again, we ask for no advertising to take place before the start date. It's okay to just post something very simple saying this activity is taking place on this date, but we ask that no actual advertising take place. Then you'll need to choose a project end date, and all projects that are awarded in this fiscal year 2021 need to be finished up by June 30th, 2022. So you do have quite a bit of time in which to do your project. So if you're wanting to be thinking ahead now and applying for something so that you're ready to get started down the road, that would be a good thing to think about. We have 2 deadlines this year for this grant program. The round 1 deadline is coming up on October 14th for projects that start December 1st or later. And then round 2, the deadline is January 27th for projects starting March 1st or later. And for both of these rounds, it's good to note that applications need to be submitted by 4:30 p.m. on the deadline date. The grant system will not allow you to submit after that time. For your application, you'll need to have 2 people associated with the project. You'll need the project director, and that is the person who is most directly responsible for the project. Oftentimes, it's also the person who's writing the grant, but doesn't have to be. And then you'll also need an authorizing official, which would be your principal, superintendent, or some other individual who has authorizing power for your school. So the project director and the authorizing official cannot be the same person, and both of them will need to sign off on the application, the contract, and the final report. And I will stop a moment to see if there are any questions. Again, you can either type into that chat window, or I will just unmute everyone here for a moment if you would like to ask some questions. All right, I have not seen or heard any questions come through, so we will move on. We're gonna head over to our website. There we are. So here is our website, and I'm gonna show you first a couple of places where you can access our online grant system. And the first one is on the home page. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see this black grants box, and there's a login button there, so you can access the system right from the home page. And then there's also a button on each of the pages for the different grant programs that we have. So we're going to take a look at the schools grant programs. So here's the Arts in the Schools grants, which we'll look at in a second, but we also have a link here to the Compass roster of artists. This is an organization based in the Twin Cities that maintains a roster of teaching artists who are able to conduct residencies in schools. So we'll just take a quick look here at what they have for you if you're looking for someone to work with your students. We'll just go to meet our artists. So we've got a big list here of all of the artists that are on their roster. And when you click on each one of them here, it has a little background about them and then talks about the kinds of residencies that they are able to do and what age groups they are focused on. And then you can contact the artists through this site. All right, we'll head back to our Arts in the Schools grant page. So here up at the top, there's that Apply Now button that will also take you to our grant system. You don't have to actually be applying to follow that link. It'll just take you to the login page. So on our page for our Arts in the Schools grants, we have our deadlines listed here along with other important dates, and especially those start dates. You can check back here. This is where we'll provide a link to the recording of this webinar if you'd like to refer back to that. Then we have a bunch of materials for you here. We've got the Arts in the Schools grant guidelines, so those are the ones specific to this program. We've got our general grant guidelines that apply to all of the grant programs. We have our application questions that are in a Word document so that you can work on a draft in there if you'd like, and then paste your answers into the application later. We've got the budget forms that you'll need, a link to the scoring criteria that the review panel will be using to score your application. And then you can also take a look at the questions you would be asked in a final report. And that is also a Word document if you wanted to work on a draft in there. A couple training resources. There's a quick video tutorial that just gives a brief overview of getting started in the grant system. And then there's also a PDF that goes into a lot more specifics. So we're going to click that Apply Now button and head into the grant system. When you get to this page, if you have not set up an account in here previously, you can click Create New Account. If you are a returning user, you can just log right in. If you're not sure whether you or someone at your school already has an account in here, please contact us and we will get that figured out for you. I'm just going to log in here. All right, and we logged in and we were brought to our dashboard, which is where you will end up if you're logging in after having already worked on things in the system before. If you're coming into the system for the first time, you'll be taken to this Apply page, which lists all of the grant programs we currently have available. You'll need to scroll through and find the one that you are looking for. Here's Arts in the Schools. If you would just like to take a look at the application without starting anything, there's this preview button here. Otherwise, you can go ahead and click the Apply button to start an application, and that's what we're going to do. So as we first come into our application, I'm going to just point out a couple of these buttons up in the right corner here. First, you have the Copy Previous Answers button. If you have worked on an application in the system before, you click this button and it'll bring a list of your previous applications, and you can copy answers over from that for any questions that are the same between the two applications. Then we also have this collaborate button. If there is someone you'd like to be working on the application with you, you just click that button. You can put their email address right in here, choose what level of permission you are giving them. You can type a little message in here asking them to do whatever you need them to do, whether it's filling in some numbers or proofreading, and then you would just click invite. That person will receive an email, and if they don't already have an account in the system, all they will need to do is make a password in order to enter the system to work on this application with you. As you're working on the application, there's a couple places where you can get questions answered or talk with someone if you need help. There's a link to schedule a meeting with me to talk about your project or any other questions you may have, or you can email your questions to me. My email address is there. So as you start your application, you'll need to provide a name for your project. And it can just be descriptive of what your project is going to be doing. Art museum field trip, for instance. Then there's a spot for you to put in the amount that you're requesting. You'll actually probably want to wait to do that until you have completed your budget form. We have links to the guidelines here again, along with the Word document with the application questions in it. We also point out that the character limit on most of the fields is really large. And we just want to let you know that we are not expecting you to come anywhere near that character limit. We just want to make sure that we are providing enough room, so don't feel like you need to fill in the whole text box. We also have here again for you the scoring criteria that the review panel will be using. You'll need to select from this list what type of project you're planning, and some different questions will show up for you based on that. So for now, we're going to pick artist residency, and we'll come back and look at the other ones later. But for all of them, you'll be asked to describe your project. And in addition to explaining the activities, you'll have to talk about which students will be participating in the project, whether they're in a particular school building or grade level or class subject, and then when the activities will take place. It's great to include the schedule of the days, get the dates in there, which groups of students are participating in each activity. So just a bunch of explanation of what you are wanting to do for your project. Here's where you'll enter in your project start and end date. Then we come to the budget form. This is a PDF form. There's a note here that asks you to use the file within Adobe Acrobat Reader, which will allow the form to calculate for you. But we will open up that form. And you'll see you can type in, again, the name of your project. You can enter in descriptions of your expenses and amounts of your expenses, and you'll see that now this is adding up for you in this total. So it'll total the cost of your project and gives you a couple of reminders for each project type, how much you can request. You would enter in your request amount here. And then if your total costs are greater than the amount that you were going to request, I'll just stick some more in here so that the cost shows more. Then we would want you to fill in down in this under other funding sources section where the rest of this is being paid from. And that other funding should total the difference between the grant funds and your expenses. So once you have downloaded that form, filled it out, saved it to your computer, then you can upload it right here. If you click that button, it just brings up where the files are on your computer. There we are, and then you can choose your file and add that in there. We've got a budget narrative field for you to add in some extra details that maybe don't fit into that budget spreadsheet. Then this next section that talks about the artistic quality and merit of your project. This is one of the section that changes the most between those different project types that you could have chosen at the beginning. So again, this is for artist residencies, and it asks to identify and provide information about all the artists involved in the project. It asks for resumes from the artists and a sample lesson plan from the artist. This could be either the lessons that they're planning to do in the residency that they're going to be doing for you, or some previous lesson plan that they have done. Then you'll need to include some samples of their work. Here it goes into some detail of what we are requesting from you, if it is images versus audio versus written work. So we have 3 upload fields here, and those are 10 megabytes each. So if you are providing your up to 10 images, you would need to probably combine a few of those into one document so that you could provide all 10 of those. And we have some links here about resizing images and combining files into one PDF. Then we also have several website fields. So if you're linking to video on YouTube, for instance, that can go here. Again, in all of these, you'll describe what it was that you attached or linked to. So let's go back before we get any further and take a look at what happens if we click on a different project type. So now we're going to click on Arts Field Trip and scroll back down to that Artistic Quality and Merit section. And now it asks us to identify and provide information about all arts institutions, performances, or events that you plan to visit, and has a bunch of website fields there for you to provide links to those arts institutions or shows. Then if we go back up again and we choose our juried student art show, again, information about the jurors and artists involved in the project, their resumes here, and then a letter of commitment from each juror that also outlines their approach to how they will give feedback to the student artists. And some optional fields here to provide additional information about them. Finally, our last project type, the prepackaged theater experience, that asks for information about the theater company and the artists that they will be sending, asking for their resumes or bios, a lesson plan or a production schedule from another previous show that they have done, and work samples. You've got upload fields and website fields again. The other thing that's different under the prepackaged theater project type is the budget form. That's a little bit different because it gives you some more options for income. So again, you would list your same expenses that you had, but then it has a place for you to list ticket income, other income, school cash budgeted, and it will, based on your expenses, let's put in some expenses here. So it totaled our expenses at $5,000. And so now it says the request cannot exceed $5,000, which was the cash cost minus other funding, or $2,500, whichever is less. So $2,500 was the limit for this program. So if we say that we're requesting $2,500, it tells us our profit is minus $2,500. So if we have a negative profit, we need to increase our other funding. And then our profit equals 0 as it should. If we had a positive profit, then we would need to reduce the amount requested. So those are the things that are different depending on which project type you click on. And now we'll continue on back to the questions that'll be the same for all of these. So your next question here is about the impact of your project. You'll talk about how it will supplement your programs rather than substitute for them. What additional impact will this have on your students compared to your regular curriculum? How the activity will be made accessible to all students, especially if participation fees will be charged. And then talking about the community component of your project, how the community will be able to see what the students have been doing. You'll also put in here the number of hours of student-artist contact time. So the way to figure this out would be to take one student and add up all of the hours that that one student would spend either interacting with the artist in the classroom, at an arts production, in an art museum, etc. Then we come to your project outcomes and goals. There's a list of Minnesota Arts outcomes for you to click on. We suggest that you choose number 8 or number 9 out of this list. You can choose up to 3 outcomes if you would like. So number 8, regional residents learn new arts skills and techniques, and number 9, regional residents gain awareness and appreciation for a variety of artistic disciplines and mediums. So you've chosen your number. Then for that outcome that you've chosen, you're going to dive down more specifically related to your project and say what will change for the students as a result of this project. And that could be skill, knowledge, attitude, behavior, condition. And then what is your plan for measuring or proving that your goal has been met or that the changes have taken place? And you'll want to look at both how you're going to gather those results and then what you will look for in those results that will indicate achievement of those outcomes. We've got a sample here of how this works. Here we have a sample project about a poet coming into the school to do a residency. Here are the outcomes that they chose. Then based on that outcome, here's the specific changes they thought would take place within their specific project. Their plan for measuring. Here they're asking a series of questions to the students both before and after the residency, and then what they'll look for in their data. And they say that success will be indicated by a more positive attitude toward poetry in the survey answers after the residency as compared to beforehand. And then finally at the bottom here is how these boxes up here would translate into an answer that you would put into the text box in the application. We do have a blank worksheet if you'd like to work through that. There are enough to do several outcomes and take it all the way through the process. If you are going to be doing a survey of some kind, please upload a copy of that here. If your evaluation is being done in some other way, then you don't necessarily need to have anything there. And then finally, you're asked for some audience numbers. We have some questions, just collecting some data. These don't have any bearing on your application, just some things that we need to collect and pass on to the state. You'll click on these links here that say view codes and just choose the code which fits you best and enter that into the box there. So that was just a bunch of data. Then we need some contact information. You'll put in information about your project director here, your authorizing official, and then we ask, in case we have questions about the application and need to contact you, which of these people is the grant writer, whether it's the project director, authorizing official, owner of this account, but not the project director or authorizing official, or if it's a totally other person and you click other, then you can enter contact information for yourself there. Then we finish up with electronic signatures. This is a great place to use that collaborate button if you need someone else to sign the application with you. So at the bottom here, we've got both a save button and a submit button. The form will be doing auto saves as you are working, but there's that save button as well. So we're going to click that for now. You'll notice when you do that, it gives you a list of all of the required questions that you have not yet answered. And so since we have not entered anything, there are a lot. So you would click continue here to go back to keep working on the application, but we're going to go back to our dashboard. And you'll see here now is the application that we just started. So to get back into that, to keep working, you would just click Edit Application here. And then if you receive a grant, you would come back in here to the same place to find your grant contract and your final report. All right, I'm just going to stop for another moment and see if there were any questions.
First grant, what is the date again that it has to be in by?
October 14th
Oh,
was
October
the
14th.
deadline for the first round.
Okay, and with ours, what I'm hoping to convey is to have Jamie's work in possibly the middle school in Montevideo for Black History Month. Isn't that in January or February? That's the route I'm trying to
Okay.
go on for her. Is it so many days that they must be there? How does that work? I've never.
We don't have a requirement right now of how many
Okay,
hours or days that they need to be there, but I think pretty
okay,
often the artist might be with that core group of students, maybe one class period a day for 4 or 5 days.
okay. And is it all right to tie it in with history and art so that she could?
It's okay to have a combination, but I think the more of focusing on history through art. So there should
Yes.
be art components that the students are working on as the main part of their residency.
Okay.
All right, so we are going to continue on with our information for today. I was just going to share some tips for working on your application. It's a great idea to start early before the deadline because there's a lot of stuff that you'll need to figure out, and gathering of work samples and resumes and getting any questions answered that you may have of us. Another tip, to make sure you read those guidelines. As you're working through the application, make sure you're reading the questions fully. You saw that each of them had multiple parts to them, just to make sure that you're answering all parts of those questions. Then also make sure to keep your answers just really clear and concise. We mentioned before that you don't need to feel like you need to fill up the entire text box. It's also good to assume that the grant reviewers don't know anything about you or your school or this. If you have been having a recurring residency over several years, to make sure that the information is there, that someone who's not familiar with any of it will be able to know what you're planning to do. And also good to have someone proofread your application. We are here to provide assistance to you. We as staff don't have any say in what gets funded or not. We're really here as your advocates. So if you'd like to call us to talk about your project before starting an application, just to make sure you're working under the right grant program, etc., you can contact us anytime with questions as you're filling out your application. And then we also can review your application before you submit it. If you contact us up to about 2 weeks before the deadline, we can guarantee that we are able to take a look at it and make sure that you have everything that you need, that there aren't any missing things. We can let you know if we were really looking for answers to go another direction than one of the questions, etc. So after you submit your application, staff will review it for eligibility and completeness. You'll have another chance there to fill in anything that might be missing. Then those applications will go to a panel of individuals from around the region who will discuss and score them based on the criteria for the program, which we'll look at in a minute. And then the SMOC board approves funding based on the recommendations of the grant review panel. For the Arts in the Schools program, the criteria include the artistic quality and merit of the project. That is worth 18 points. The impact on the participants, worth 11 points, and the feasibility of the project, worth 5 points. And there are details about each of these criteria in that document that I showed you on our website. If your grant is awarded, you'll need to complete an online contract within 30 days. And then after completing your contract, you'll receive 80% of your grant award before your start date. Then you'll receive the remaining 20% of your grant award after your project and your final report are completed. You'll need to acknowledge the grant on any publicity that you have. We'll give you a credit line that needs to be included in that. You may also need to use this Minnesota Legacy logo in your publicity, depending on the source of the funds that you are awarded. And both the logos, credit lines, posters will all be sent to you ahead of time, so you don't need to worry about making sure you have the right information included. After you have completed your project's activities, you need to do an online final report within 60 days after your project end date. It's a good idea to look through that final report when you're starting your project so that you know what information you will need to gather throughout the project, like attendance and things related to outcomes. We also expect that you will spend the full amount that you proposed in your application budget. And if it looks like there are going to be any changes to your expenses, significant changes during your project, you should get in touch with us to get those changes approved in advance. If you have questions about any of this, we are available for you. We're in our office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., not necessarily always over the lunch hour. And also these days, it's good to just call ahead and make sure that someone is in the office if you're planning to stop in. Otherwise, you can reach us by phone or by email. And that is everything we had for the presentation today. I'm just going to unmute everybody again here. And if you have anything else that you'd like to talk about, I am here to talk. Well, thanks for joining us today.